by this opportunity this morning. We're very happy and enthusiastic to be working with the Wheel on the Access EU programme to assist all sports bodies. That's right through from clubs all the way through to NGBs. So everyone's welcome, and we want to encourage and support everybody in preparing applications and assisting in project delivery around this initiative. The whole EU programme this year, there's a number of new opportunities emerging, and you're going to hear about these. There's Erasmus Plus, ESF Plus, and other programmes also that might be of interest or relevant to anybody who's on this call or other NGBs, if you want to inform people about the opportunities. What we really want to do is make sure that that we can provide you with as much assistance as we can, and also to ensure that we can help you to provide links, to find partners, to develop develop links and partnerships with other bodies around Europe. We're members of an organisation called EPSI, which is the European Partnership Programme, to help us to work on innovation around Europe and finding partners on that sort of initiative. So look, it's a very tight schedule today, so I won't stay long at all. I just wanted to welcome you and thank you for all attending, and thank you to the Wheel and to Cormac for leading out from Sport Ireland's point of view on this initiative. And I hope that you'll learn lots, and that everybody, will find opportunities to find new and interesting and innovative ways of finding funding to support your activities. We know that, the economy may or may not suffer in the coming years, and we need to be agile and find new ways of providing support for everything that you want to do. And we want to make sure that we can support you in finding that extra, I suppose, assistance where possible. So look, that's all. I just wanted, as I said, a quick welcome and thank you all very much for attending. And I'm going to hand back now. I think, is it Cormac?
It's me.
Emma. Thank you very much, Emma. And yeah, thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Luna. And thanks a million to everyone for being here today. I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen here. And hopefully you'll all be able to see it very soon. Can everybody see that? Maybe somebody can give me a thumbs up if they can. Excellent. Okay, great. Okay, so listen, hi everyone, and thanks very much, Luna, for that. And I'm really delighted to be here and to talk to everybody. My name is Emma Murta. I'm the European Programmes Manager with the Wheel, which many of you will have already heard of, but just in case you haven't, we are the National Association for Community and Voluntary Organisations, Charities and Social Enterprises. And of course, that includes many sports bodies as well. My role within that is to oversee the delivery of this programme that Una mentioned. It's a Department of Foreign Affairs funded programme called Access Europe. It's all about kind of supporting civil society organisations, including sporting bodies, to access and manage EU funding. So I'll tell you more about that now in a little while, but for now, I did just want to kind of touch on how EU funding works, because I think it might help for those who are completely new. It might help to kind of set the context. I won't go into massive detail because it's actually unnecessary. You don't really need to know a great deal about EU politics or policy to be able to access EU funding and to participate in European projects, but it can help to kind of have a broad overview to understand, I suppose, where is this coming from, to navigate the process a little bit easier and connect the dots that will help you ultimately make kind of stronger applications. So the first kind of piece of EU terminology that often gets thrown around the place is the Multi-Annual Financial Framework, or the MFF. You often hear this spoken about, but basically it's the EU's long-term budget, and it runs according to 7-year cycles. In these 7 years, they determine, well, what are the goals that they want to achieve within the 7 years, and how are they going to allocate the funding to achieve those goals. So at the moment, we are in a bit of a transition period. So the 2014 to 2020 MFF has just wound down, obviously, and we're just starting the 21 to 27 MFF. And new funding programs for that MFF were due out in January, but there was a really significant delay this year. I suppose we can't blame them, given the year that was 2020, and there was Brexit, there was a pandemic, but there was also there was a lot of kind of delays in terms of political agreement with certain member states. So as a result, the programs for this year, including the Erasmus Plus Sports program, which we're going to focus on today, were all really just released in the last 2 weeks. So this is all brand new information, and I suppose we ourselves are also kind of trying to wrap our heads around it at the same time. So I suppose on the one hand, you could see it as kind of an awkward time to get started, because it is confusing. You know, there's a lot that's, you know, there's a lot of newness that we all have to try and get to grips with these programs. But on the other hand, it's a really good time to get started with EU funding, because if you invest the time to learn the system and learn how everything works now and learn this new program, then it's good for 7 years, and there will be lots of funding opportunities that can come from that. This year, along with the standard MFF, which is the biggest one that we've ever had, it increases every year. There's also 3 additional budget lines. So there's Next Generation EU, this Recovery and Resilience Facility, and there's also a €5 billion Brexit Adjustment Reserve. And just to give you a very quick visual, I won't go into detail here because it's not really important, but you can see that the blue is the usual MFF that we would have had. And then there's this also very hefty Next Generation EU, which was there to kind of help repair some of the damage that's been done by the pandemic. And then the Recovery and Resilience package is within that, and that's all around kind of grants and loans to member states around, you know, kind of reforms and investments into modernising Europe for the future. And then the 5 billion Brexit reserve, this was for, it's not represented here, but this was for member states most affected by Brexit, and 25% of it, or over 1 billion, actually went to Ireland. So that's kind of an overall picture of EU funding. And I suppose when you see kind of numbers thrown around like that, it can seem very exciting and like there's an endless amount of money. But I suppose in reality, it's important to kind of keep things in perspective. A huge portion of that is going to be absorbed by member state governments, by large scale projects like infrastructure and policy reform and things like that. However, I would say that increasingly the EU are pushing for more citizen involvement, more civil society involvement in EU projects and programs, and it's something that the Wheel is certainly campaigning very hard for. That, you know, that there's ring-fenced funding, that there's as much kind of civil society or citizen representation in projects as possible. And I suppose the Access Europe programme is really all about helping to facilitate that. So I suppose keep it in perspective, but at the same time, you know, the way that the trends are all indicating that more and more civil society involvement, including sporting organizations, will be involved in future programs and projects. And just, I suppose I mentioned at the beginning, this is probably one of the more useful things to keep in mind. So I mentioned at the beginning that each MFF, each multi-annual financial framework, starts with them setting goals of what they want to achieve. And this is where they kind of formulate their policy. And that's what they want to achieve within this period. And you don't need to know, as I said, the ins and outs of it or anything to be successful in European projects, but you should understand some of the kind of basic EU policy. And the reason for that is the programs always follow policy. The funding programs always come from some kind of policy. So what starts with an EU policy kind of brings about a funding program with a set of priorities that will help to deliver on that policy. The programs are often called financial instruments as well, just to make it a bit confusing. But these programs are there to deliver on the policy, and they have usually a work program is released at the very beginning of the program and then updated annually to make it kind of more agile and able to kind of respond to needs as they come up. And then from that, you have projects. So you should always remember when formulating your projects that it should be closely connected to EU policy and to EU priorities. And I suppose to complete the circle as well, a lot of the projects, the research and the work that is carried out through projects, that's what ultimately delivers on the policy goals that were set. And then it's also what helps influence the kind of future policy. So this is one of the most important points to take, is that, you know, any project that you write should be very closely connected with EU policy. And just, you know, I was able to kind of very quickly find that one of the most recent kind of sports policies that came out was this one for 21 to 24. This was published by the Council of European Ministers of Sport in December of 2020, and it outlines some of the objectives for the EU in relation to sport. And it talks about the 3 key priority areas. It's a big long document, but 3 of the key priority areas were protecting integrity and values, socioeconomic and environmental dimensions of sport, and then promotion of participation in sport and health enhancing activities. So certainly if you're planning to write projects, it would be a really good idea to take a look at that document and other documents like it closely and get to know, okay, what does the EU want to achieve with sport? And then try and keep that at the heart of your project, because that will ultimately increase your chances of success. And I suppose with that, that's kind of my little brief overview of what is EU funding and how does it work. But with that, when we talk about, if you're planning projects, we did want to kind of get an idea, a feel for the room and of everybody that's here today, how many of you are actually planning a project application for this year, and how many of you are just kind of researching and getting a sense for what's out there. So before I hand over to Cormac, I'm actually going to hand back over to, because Cormac's going to give us more of a deep dive into the Erasmus Plus Sports program now very soon. But we did want to do just a quick poll to just see where people were in the room. So I'll hand over to, it's up there and it should be in front of your screen now. And Sinead will have shared it. So I can read out the results. I can see there's lots and lots of votes coming in. Great. Okay. So far, we're just researching is definitely winning so far, but there's still a few more kind of votes that need to be cast. So, okay, well, at the moment we have 74% just researching, with 26% actively planning. So that's very interesting to know. So it's 24%, 26% now. Great. Okay, so yeah, 74 and percent are just researching and 26% are actively planning. So that's great, and hopefully everybody will get a little bit of something from today's session and be able to kind of plan their journey. If you are actively planning and are making an application soon, we'll have some supports that you can access at the end of today's session, so stay tuned for that. And if you're just researching, I suppose just to let you know, this is an ongoing collaboration with Sport Ireland, between Access Europe and the Wheel and Sport Ireland. So we plan to have many more kind of events like this that will help you to continue your research. This is very much the first toe in the water, kind of getting to know what's out there, and as this year progresses, for sure, we'll hopefully be able to have more events like this to continue your research. So that's it for me. I'll hand over to Cormac for now to have a closer look at Erasmus Plus Sport. So whenever you're ready, Cormac, and just remember any kind of questions that you have, I'll keep an eye on the chat box now for a while, and we can answer them as we go. But we will have time for a Q&A later on as well.
Hello, hi, Emma. How are you doing? Hello, everyone. Can you hear me, Emma?
Yeah, we can hear you perfect. Go ahead.
Great stuff. Thank you, thank you, Emma. Thanks to everyone. It's fantastic. First of all, it's absolutely fantastic to see such a great group collecting this morning to hear about European funding. So I'd just like to again reiterate, welcome you all. It's fantastic to see all the different organizations, clubs, groups from local level right through to national governing bodies of sport. Absolutely delighted to see all of you here this morning. And really interesting, the poll actually. Obviously 74% of you are in a researching mode. And of course, I think this is reflective a small bit on sport, the sports sector's, I suppose, understanding of European funding and indeed engagement. And certainly it's my goal to see way more applications and projects being funded and funding coming into sporting bodies for different projects. And so I certainly hope we can convert some of those 26% into projects that will be progressed, and indeed some of the 74% of you that are researching, that you may take the plunge. So look, it's as I said, it's fantastic. We're going to just hone in a bit more detail this morning, just from my session here. I'm going to talk to you very specifically about a program that is the Erasmus Plus Sport program, and this is the go-to, really. It is an entry point program for many sporting bodies in Ireland. And I suppose I will say that just before I jump in here to give you an overview, that most of the content that I'm presenting is from some of the slides and indeed content from a recent information day that was opened up, presented by the European Commission. So just to acknowledge that most of the content in here is coming from European Commission. So just first off the bat, what I wanted to first of all, basically just bear with me. I'm going to run through a couple of slides. There's going to be a lot of information, but don't worry, we're going to send this out to you afterwards, and we will also have other follow-up information, so you don't need to be taking notes as we go here. We will be sending this slideshow out to everyone. So first of all, again, maybe harking back to what Emma has just said, the programs and such like, the Erasmus Plus program is one of the biggest European programs, right? It is a very, very broad program that covers areas such as education, training, youth affairs, and environment, but also culture. But sport is very much a parcel of that big program now. And so for the Erasmus Plus Sport, when we refer to Erasmus Plus Sport, we are referring to the pillar within the Erasmus program that focuses on sport, okay? And so that is one pillar within the program. And so again, there is a new program just announced. Really, it is literally within the last 2 or 3 weeks. So the 2021 to 2027 program, it's a 7-year fund cycle, and it is just opened in the last 2 weeks. So this leads on. Erasmus Sport really started back in 2014, and so in effect there was a program in place which many of you may have been engaging with, but through that cycle, over that 6-year period, about 1,000.
Cormac, you've gone on mute.
Thank you. So yeah, 250 million invested, and the main point probably for the new program is there has been a 200 million euro increase in the sport budget for the Erasmus program. So that's point number one. There is an increase in this area, and so that means more projects are going to get funded, and there are a number of new strands within the program. Okay, so second point, again, the focus still remains on EU values, and Emma referred to policy, strategy, policy and such like. At the heart of most European programs, and indeed certainly the sport and the Erasmus program, is the agendas of social inclusion, promotion of sport and physical activity, integration, equality, anti-doping, innovation, climate action. These are all really, really strong themes. And we're going to be going into a bit more detail, and you will read a bit more about that, if you like, as we go forward. But these are some of the values that basically underpin the programs. The new program is designed to be more flexible and simplified. So a lot of people would be put off in the past from European programs around the paperwork, all of maybe the potential kind of, some of the burden around this. It has been simplified. And so we will see a bit more detail about what that's about. There is a funding call open now for all of the sport programs, which we'll talk about just a bit more detail. But there is the first, I suppose, the 2021 program is just launched, and there's also a number of new opportunities. We won't be going into them today. We'll be focusing just very squarely on what's available at the moment. But there are a number of new strands that are emerging under the Erasmus Sport program that offer opportunities. So there is a mobility scheme. There is a healthy lifestyles for all program that is being opened up. There are numerous other partnerships and innovation programs that will be opening up. So again, all of these will happen over the next, this year we have a basic program starting, but this will build up over the next few years. Okay. Hopefully next slide. Doesn't want to go.
Do you want me to share your slides for you, Cormac?
Yep, I'll just try here again with this one, and we'll see if we can.
Okay.
Okay. So for the 2021 program, this again is just what's available for Erasmus Sport at the moment. There is a budget of about 42, give or take, 41.5 million euro. And so it is divided into 3 categories, which again, we'll be looking at in a bit more detail. But basically most, if not all of the project areas are partnership projects, and they will come in under, I suppose, cooperative partnerships, be they research and development initiatives and indeed participation initiatives, or indeed not-for-profit events. But this is the type of budget that's available that they want to disperse over the next number of months. So I'm not going to kind of just focus in on this one. Well, I suppose this is again an extract from the Erasmus Program Guide, which is a document, and I suppose it talks about projects funded under Erasmus program are likely to have a positive impact on persons directly or indirectly involved in activities such as increasing levels of participation in sport, physical activity, increasing knowledge on how to tackle cross-border threats to the integrity of sport, match doping in sport, match fixing and violence, as well as kind of intolerance, discrimination, governance, dual careers, etc., etc. Increased recognition of volunteering activities in sports, increased mobility of volunteers, coaches, etc., social inclusion and equal opportunities in sport. These are, again, some of the themes that are quite strong. And within the program, and this is across all of the Erasmus programs, you have what's called horizontal policy priorities, and indeed specific program priorities. And the horizontal policy priorities are the high level, I suppose it's called priority areas or goals for the European Commission. And these are embedded across all of the programs that Europe are running over the next 7 years. So inclusion and diversity in all fields of education, training, youth and sport. Environment and fight against climate change. Innovation, practice for digital transformation, readiness, resilience and capacity, common values, civil engagement and participation. So again, these themes, again, they will be looked at in a bit more detail in the guideline documents, but they're horizontal policy priorities and programs will need to reference into these. These are specific policy priorities within the sport area. And so encouraging the participation in sport and physical activity, promoting integration and values within sport, promoting education in and through sport, combating violence and tackling racism, discrimination and intolerance in sport. Again, important areas. And you will see that we will have to reference these in our projects, as we prepare applications. So
just 1 more minute now, Cormac, if you can.
Oh no.
Went quickly, doesn't it?
Okay, cool. That's fine. Again, as I said to people, this slideshow is available to circulate afterwards. But just to say to you that there are three broad areas here. You have cooperative partnerships, small-scale partnerships, and not-for-profit events. And there's some detail in here. This is the cooperative partnerships is where it, again, open to most, if not all, sporting bodies. You require three organizations from three different countries to come together on this. There's a bit more detail on that slide. Small scale partnerships are a really nice entry point for a lot of organizations, because it just requires two partners to come together on a project, and indeed you can actually come in at a nice entry point level. And then so the partnerships, there are, if you like, a number of, there's been some changing to the structure of these, but you can come in at an entry point of a project level of around €30,000. That's kind of what's deemed to be an entry point, or slightly below it, I imagine. But the actual range and scale of project that you develop can range from 30 right up to €400,000. Not-for-profit events, again, there's specific categories around this, and they're in the slide, but there are two broad categories. You can have European-wide events or more localized events, which are smaller. And again, you know, there's various, if you want to call it, pockets of funding that are available for the type of events that you're looking to develop. I'm not going to go to this one. It's just new funding rules. It's just a couple of slight adjustments in the way they're processing these programs. But the overall focus here focuses on results and outputs, and not on the administrative and financial elements. So I think I just take that final bullet point, because they are really at pains to point out that they want to make this accessible and easy for organizations to get in here and get funding for good projects. The timeline for the Erasmus program 2021, the call has just gone out in the last 2 weeks. There is a 20th of May deadline for the first round applications. And what I would say to most organizations is, don't worry, this program is going to be around next year. There will be a call next year, more than likely a bit earlier. But so we don't need to rush in this year. But if you have a project that's well set up and is ready to go, if you've got partners in place, by all means, we look to actually get an application in over the next couple of weeks. So the overall timeline runs through with the signature of all contracts coming through, if you like, December, January, and then projects have usually got a 2-year period to go about implementation. So basically, from my point of view, there's obviously if sporting bodies have got queries or they've got interested, there's the Europe, the email address for the Wheel, the Access Europe team in the Wheel, Emma's team, Europe at the wheel.ie. And of course, there's myself, and my details are there as well. And there's the website, really, the European Erasmus Plus Sport website, and that's all there. And, again, there's a lot of information available on that website as well. Okie dokie, over to you, okay. Emma. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry for rushing you, Cormac. It goes very quickly because there's a lot to go through. But yeah, if anybody is planning on going for that deadline in May, it was a bit rushed this year because of the delayed program. By all means, link in with myself, link in with Cormac, and we can help support you through that process. But certainly, once this year is over and the rush in the programs is over, you'll find that it falls into this nice kind of predictable deadline every year that you can have. You can kind of take a nice strategic, hopefully not too stressful approach to applying for. So thanks very much for that, Cormac. Any questions you have, just put them into the chat box. But we're going to hand over to Miles Sweeney of Donegal Sports Partnership now, who has extensive experience in various European programs. He's just going to share a little bit about their experience of participating in projects. So over to you, Miles, when you're ready.
Thanks, Emma. I'm just sharing the screen here. Can you see that?
It's the same thing, Miles, where it's a little bit to the left. So we can't see the full slide, unfortunately.
Okay, I'll stop that share then.
Okay.
Can you see that? Hello?
No, you're not. No, there's nothing sharing at the moment now.
Good. Sorry.
No worries. Okay, it's a little bit cut off, but I think we can.
Can I
Yeah.
change it here just? I don't know why that's happening.
You might want to do the non-advanced screen share. It might help if you. Well, there you go. It seems to be working now.
One second, I'll just open it up totally here.
Yeah. No, well, it was actually better the way it was before.
Let me see. I'll come out of.
Yeah, if you go to just the basic screen share, you stop share and then go.
Right here, but my name is Miles Sweeney. I'm a coordinator with Donegal Sports Partnership, and I'm just going to give a grassroots, I suppose, view in terms of working an organisation working in terms of working on European funding over the last number of years. I have been working, I suppose, with different organisations over my career that have attracted European funding. I suppose, given the geographical location of Donegal, we've been open to accessing European funding through the EU Programme for Peace and Reconciliation. So that has obviously provided us with a whole lot of opportunities. And it has allowed us, I suppose, to start to use, I suppose, sport and recognise sport as a tool for meeting objectives of peace and reconciliation, albeit that we're going through the series going through a bit of a transition at the minute, or a bit of an issue at the minute with all the troubles that are happening in Belfast and Derry. So some of the work that's been done over the last 25 years seems to have been undone over the last few days. But that said, it's been really, I suppose, positive in terms of, providing, the community and allowing, I suppose, our organisation to link in and to collaborate with a lot of other organisations within our region and sharing across into Northern Ireland. We've been involved in programmes, I suppose, going back to Peace 1, 2, 3, and we're working now on a Peace 4 programme as well. Across a cross-border programme, and I suppose, if I can reiterate, I suppose the whole thing around the partnership and relationship building, because a lot of these programs are very much based around building relationships and building trust and building partnerships, and really that opened up our eyes around sharing and I suppose not alone in terms of statutory links, but also in terms of clubs from different communities and different cultures working together. So it's very much around that whole area as well of ensuring that the partnerships, collaborations, that we build that sort of model as such in terms of being able to share. The other thing, I suppose, in 2007, then the EU White Paper on sport was published as well, and that opened up a whole lot of areas as well. And out of that obviously came the Erasmus Plus project, and it opened areas like social inclusion, education and training, as Cormac has mentioned, areas of volunteering, drugs and sport, integration, equality, and so on. And I suppose that fitted very well with the likes of the sports partnership as well here in Donegal, in terms of a lot of the targets that we were trying to hit, I suppose, in terms of working in sport. And it's very much around, I suppose, not pure sports development, but more around the sport for developing, using sport as a way and a means to meeting an objective. And that's one of the challenges as well, I suppose, is around that shared objective of a funder versus the objective of the organisation that you work with. Currently, at the minute, we have 4 programs that we're working with. One is with it's a Football Clubs for Peace, and it's a cross-border program, and we're working into Derry and Tyrone, and we have 4 clubs from each community there. Clubs coming from different cultures, different backgrounds, and basically using sport and soccer in this instance as a way and means of sharing and bringing people and bringing communities together, and looking at a more positive way of building communities as such. We have an intergenerational program which we're working with as well, and that's very much around working with young, learning from the elder and vice versa and so on, and that with that working within the local area here, working in 2 communities in the north of the county and in the east of the county. We have a minority sports program as well, which works into 8 communities, on 4 from either side of the border as well, and working into Fermanagh and into Tyrone. So it has broadened our I suppose our area in terms of our work as such, but it has opened up a whole lot of new opportunities for us to test the water and to design sports programs that make a difference in terms of bringing communities together. And again, a lot of those are very much working on the whole thing of peace and reconciliation. Our final program, I suppose, it's the newest program here, and it's the one that is actually an Erasmus Plus funded project, and it's the Sport Together program. And this is a new program. The funding was basically approved there just prior to Christmas, so we've only kicked off on the program at the minute. It has a duration of 30 months, and it started on the 1st of January there, 2021, and it'll work right through to the 30th of June 2023. And we're working with 7 other, I suppose, partners from across the European Union. One of the lead partner in this instance is an NGO. It's the Vienna Institute of International Dialogue and Cooperation, and they're sort of driving as lead. They're driving the application. They have driven the application, but also now in terms of managing the project, they would manage the project as well. And we have 2 partners as well from the island of Ireland. We have the Football Association of Ireland, and we have the Irish Football Association working with us. And the basis for us getting involved in this project was based on a previous program that we worked with in the past, in terms of engaging with intercultural groups in the area. Another partner in this is the Youth Initiative for Human Rights, and then we have Athena, which is a citizens association for combating trafficking and human rights. There's the University of Thessaly in Greece, and ourselves. And then we have a Zagreb 041, which is a social soccer club based in Croatia as well. So it's quite a diverse group, I suppose, and it does take a wee while. The project itself is called Sport Together, Strengthening Cross-Community Social Inclusion in Post-Conflict Regions. So we're all sort of learning from one another, and at the minute we're just going through a phase of doing our baseline analysis. The overall objective of the Sport Together project is to strengthen social inclusion in divided communities with a focus on young people and girls, and to increase participation of disadvantaged groups, and in particular refugees and newly arrived migrants and minorities. So that sort of fits in quite well into a strategy that we have here in terms of working with ethnic minority groups in the area. And we've tested the water with that, as I said, with a previous project. And it's worked quite well. And in the county here at the minute, through the local authority, we're working on an integration strategy as well, working with ethnic minority groups in sport as providing part of that as well. So it fits quite well. So that's probably the reason we got involved in it. Challenges in terms of European funding, and I've, over the last, I suppose, 25 years been working in that area. I just want to highlight some of the challenges. I suppose the levels of administration can be quite high, from your application process right through to monitoring and evaluation and reporting and so on, can be quite detailed. So it's important that people, would take time and really look at that whole side of the levels of administration and what they have to commit to it. And the requirement for detail as well would be quite high. Some of the applications can be, quite wordy and cover quite a bit of detail. And again, I suppose the other thing would be around accessing reliable partners, because it is a partnership program and you do need that contribution coming from all your partners. And Cormac has mentioned in the next program there, I think the new program that I think it's 10 different partners. So that's challenging as well, because you need to get partners on board that can provide some sort of contribution to the program. The practical delivery, I suppose, in terms of target groups and what you're trying to achieve on the ground here can be challenging. Language barriers, cultural differences, the financial management, all of that is very, very challenging. And then I suppose the limited time at times for sustainability and some of these projects as well. If you're trying to look at an objective, it can take a wee bit of while to change and improve cultural diversity and so on if you're working on such a program.
It's just 1 minute now, Mike.
Bother, I'm just finished now. I suppose the positives around European funding for us then has been around developing ideas for new projects and new sports projects, and things like back in 2010, we worked on a community hubs program here in the county prior to the dormant accounts coming into fund sports partnerships, and that opened up, you know, a lot of new ideas. And so you get new ideas from these projects. It provides match funding as well. It can provide match funding for a lot of organizations, can provide employment of project officers and staff. The sharing of resources and information and best practice is huge as well, and that can be a real help to a local organisation like ourselves. And as I said, new ideas and experiences, opportunities to travel. There's the odd trip as well that comes to it, and then the building of friendships. And you're meeting people from different cultures, different communities, and so on. And that's obviously a positive. That's it, Emma.
Okay.
Apologies. Yeah.
No worries. No worries at all. Thanks very much, Miles. We're going to ask as well for Michael McGeehan to just share a little bit of his experience as well now in a second. But I just want to address some of the questions that have come up, because a lot were popping up as you were speaking, Miles, I think, when they were hearing about your experience. So one of the main questions that I just said we'd address, it happens every time there's any kind of European funding training, is Brexit, and are the UK in or out, or how does it work, and can they be included as partners? So I suppose the one exception, in general, the UK is out of European programs and cannot participate as a partner in projects unless it is the peace program. So peace has been specifically continued to help, I suppose, support Northern Ireland through the Brexit process and to continue the very important work that the previous peace programs have done. So the UK and the EU came up with an agreement that the peace program would remain. And in fact, it's been expanded, and there will be lots of opportunities. So if you're in a border county, you can absolutely collaborate with the Northern Irish organisation and in fact, you have to if you want to be in a peace project, and it could certainly be around sport or any number of other activities as well. But that's the one exception. When we're talking about Erasmus Plus, the UK are not eligible to participate as partners anymore. So that I just wanted to address that, because we had that in various forms in questions there. There was also just a couple of other questions about how you go about sourcing and engaging partners. We did a training on this, the Wheel did a training on this back in January, and if one of my good colleagues, Christina or Emily, can make a note, we can include in the follow-up a link to that recorded training. It was a full, I think, 2-hour session. There's resources, there's a full, like, if you have no European connections and you're just getting started for the first time, this is a kind of map to connecting with other European countries. There is no magic formula. It's really just, I suppose, reaching out, and you know, we do have things that can help. I would always recommend looking at that training anyway as the first step, but also Sport Ireland and Access Europe have developed kind of a template to help people communicate their organisation and their projects. It's mainly to help European organisations connect with potential Irish partners where Sport Ireland might be able to connect them. But it could also go the other way. I think, Cormac, you mentioned like you're part of this network. I can't remember the acronym, is it EPSI or something? This sport network that you're part of at EU level. So certainly maybe Sport Ireland can help spread the word. If there were Irish organisations looking for partners in Europe, they could help do that. But as I said, there's a whole training that leads you from, you know, if you have no partners and you're just starting completely from square one, we'll make sure that you get that in the follow-up.
Sorry, Emma, could I interject a small bit there just to firstly say thanks to Miles there for giving us a quick overview about the experiences in Donegal, and that's absolutely fantastic to hear about that. Just to maybe make a small point again, I think one of the things that you really get from the European involvement is really an opportunity to interact with other partners and looking outside your own sphere of, or your own network as it is as an organization. So I think Miles working with that variety of different groups really opens up your perspective on a lot of things around Europe, and indeed the power of sport to influence and to actually add value and to really change lives across in different areas is so important. I think it's something that we should never underestimate, the power of sport to really connect communities, bring people together, integrate people into countries that are coming new to a country. I mean, the power of sport is just phenomenal. And I just think it is really good. Just to maybe make the point that my understanding is that the peace programs are, I suppose, administered largely on a national basis. So the Erasmus programs are centrally managed through the European department, if you like, that's responsible for Erasmus and indeed that area. So there's a slight difference there in terms of the way they're administered. The applications go through a central application system. They're centrally coordinated, and funding is issued directly to the partners. And again, you know, so the administrative burden is a bit lighter than having an intermediary or a national body that you're reporting to, and they in turn are reporting to Europe, if you like. So there's just something to be aware of there. My understanding on some of the smaller scale Erasmus partnership programs is that, you know, they really are striving to kind of minimize the administration around this. Yes, there will be an element of due diligence and obviously making sure that funding is administered correctly, but and indeed that there is a report on the projects, but you know, it's not as onerous as some of the more you know, trickier, I would say, kind of larger programs, you know. So just to say that. So look at my colleague Michael McGeehan in our coaching unit in Sport Ireland. I'm just going to ask him to kind of give a quick reference. Michael has been involved with numerous Erasmus projects over the last few years. And just to give a quick, just conscious of the time, Michael, but just if you give, just to maybe introduce yourself and give a quick overview.
Okay, thanks very much, Cormac. Hi everyone, another Donegal voice. My name is Michael McGeehan. I'm the Director of Sport Ireland Coaching, and I suppose for the last 8 or 9 years we've been heavily involved in Erasmus projects and then its successor Erasmus Plus projects. So we started off, I think, with just to give you an idea of the wide variety of projects that we've been involved in. Our first project was the ELISA project, which involved developing an outdoor animateur or outdoor education course that could be run across Europe. We then had a project on dual careers, which is looking at the dual careers of athletes and the dual careers of coaches and what was best practice across Europe. We've been involved in the Blue project, which again was looking at the fitness industry and qualifications in it. I suppose the project that we're most heavily involved in and we're proud of would be the iCoach Kids project, and we're on to the second sort of coming of it now with a second tranche of funding for the iCoach Kids project, which I think when it was assessed last year or the year before, it came in at #1 as regards projects in the marking scheme. We've been involved in 3-year projects. We've been involved in 1-year projects. One of the 1-year projects was around, we called it Gaining Insight. And that was a partnership with Vision Sports here in Ireland, the FAI, the FA in the UK, and Brazilian soccer, where we were looking at best practice when it came to the training of coaches in the whole area of Vision Sports in soccer. And that involved trips to Brazil, trips to the UK as well. So we're currently putting together a proposal for a new project under the new scheme, which we hope to have in at the end of May, which is looking at green sport. And if we're successful, hopefully we'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that. But I certainly agree with everything that's been said. You've got to try and match what your goals are for your organisation with the goals of the EU, and in particular their work plan, because the work plan does change every number of years, and their emphasis. They didn't always fund sport through Erasmus, but they certainly recognised the importance of it there a number of years ago, and it has its own dedicated budget now as a result. So matching your needs is important, but also your selection of your partners is important because it's all about collaboration now, and that they share some of the same goals and objectives that you have. So that's just a quick overview, Cormac.
Thank you, Michael. That's absolutely fantastic, and well done to you and the team for all the projects you've been involved with. Emma, we've been cutting across our timeline here a bit, but you know, see what you think in terms of actually how you want to proceed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're actually all right. I think we'll have time here, and we did talk about if there is people who are particularly keen on projects, we will hang around for 10 minutes or so after the call, if anybody wants to kind of stay on and ask more specific questions. But it would be good just before we move on to kind of the next bit, which is like, I suppose, looking at good practice and what supports are available, just to address some of the kind of comments that are coming through. So I think we explained the Brexit one for sure. There's also a lot of people asking about, I suppose, capital funding for things like pitches and facilities and kind of what I would call bricks and mortar projects. So I addressed it there in the comments, but just to say the way it generally works is that type of funding for communities, I suppose, is handled through things like LEADER and the ESF or Peace, I suppose, in Northern Ireland and the border counties. So it's kind of distributed nationally. For Erasmus Plus, it really is innovation, collaboration, partnerships kind of projects. So it doesn't generally fund bricks and mortar in any make, shape or form. It's all around activities. So it's not that the EU doesn't fund stuff like that. It does. It's just that it's administered through the Irish government and they fund it. Whereas at EU level, it's mainly around kind of innovation and partnership, and that EU dimension, the real value of collaborating with other partners. And it's something I think that Miles and Michael kind of alluded to there. Like, it's hard to explain the value that it adds to your organization, but it's a huge benefit. Once you've had that experience, you realize how much you're getting from it. Somebody else also asked, I think it was Amina asked, can a partner be a university, or does it have to be a sports body or organization? In general, there's a real kind of they really like to encourage what they call like cross-sectoral partnerships. So it's a really positive thing to, you know, reach beyond just the sports sector and look kind of more towards universities, you know, any other types of organizations where you might be able to work with them to collaborate to make something new or different. So you're definitely not limited to sports organizations, and in fact it can be a really good kind of strong thing to have a cross-sectoral project team. I don't know if Miles or Michael, if you want to add in anything there based on your experience.
Yeah, definitely to have a cross-sectional team, because if you look at areas like, for example, research, evaluation, monitoring, evaluation, etc., it's always useful to have maybe a third level institute or something like that involved. So definitely I wouldn't be going for, if you were looking at partners, you wouldn't be looking for 10 similar partners. You'd be looking at the skill base of each of the partners and what they can provide to the problem.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and certainly from our point of view, we have a combination of universities of third level. We've got some of the Olympic councils from various countries involved. We're involved in a project at the moment trying to develop a European coach developer academy, and the lead partner in that would be the European Paralympic Committee. With associated partners like the Trainer Academy from Cologne in Germany, and we've in the past collaborated with INSEP in France, which is a high performance center over there. So yeah, that's why it's important to match maybe the partners in your application, and once you get started, you build up a network, and that is what it's all about, is building up that strong network. And obviously part of the old Erasmus and Erasmus Plus projects was reciprocal visits to the partners' countries, where you can sort of showcase best practice of what's happening in your country. And that certainly is an important part of the whole Erasmus project.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, it's the opportunity to kind of learn from different EU sector or different sectors that you might not collaborate with on a daily basis, and to add things like, for even in our own Erasmus Plus projects in the wheel, which, aren't focused on sport, but, we have the opportunity to collaborate with universities and things like that we wouldn't generally get to do on a day-to-day basis. So it can add huge value. So I think sometimes people, when they're getting started with European funding, can see the requirement for partnership as like an obstacle or something that they kind of have to do. But once you get into it, you realize the value of it, that it shouldn't be something that like, oh, we have to have partners in order to access this funding. They actually add tremendous value to the project, and there's a real reason why you see partnership featured so much in European programs.
Just maybe a note there, Emma, just to say that for certainly as an entry point, opportunity for either clubs or localized, if you like, sporting kind of organizations, or indeed a national governing body. But the entry point option here is the small scale collaborative partnership projects, and you only require one partner there. So actually they've taken it from 3 to 2 now, so it's really accessible. I mean, and you can enter that program at the 30,000 level or under. So the total project envelope, is quite manageable. And again, that's allocated to 2 of the partners. So the funding is split, between the 2 work packages of the 2 partners. So it is a 50-50 split by and large. So again, it's a nice entry point option, I think, for a lot of sporting bodies to look at. And then again, like a lot of these things, the European initiatives, once you get to know the actual lie of the land, once you do one project or in partner maybe on a project, you actually start opening up the door to more opportunities, and you start becoming aware. And that's where the likes of Michael is tuned in now, and indeed Miles, into the partners, the networks, how it all works. And then you get drawn into other projects, and it actually kind of develops over years. So we're at the start of a new cycle here now. And, there's an opportunity to kind of, as I said, maybe touch the toe in the water initially, and then, develop from there.
And we would very much, and I suppose what Access Europe is here to do is to help people on that initial journey, to just kind of getting started. And we really recommend taking kind of a measured, strategic approach to think about what it is that you want to achieve with European funding, and kind of pace yourselves. Because I suppose if you throw yourself in at the deep end, you can easily end up quite overwhelmed, and maybe it's not an enjoyable experience to deliver the project, because you maybe bit off a bit more than you could chew. But by kind of pacing yourself, starting out, as Cormac said, with one of those kind of small collaborative partnerships, and gradually building your network and finding some really good partners that you enjoy collaborating with and that it's easy to work with, then you're opening up doors for yourself and helping to make it this kind of beneficial experience. So that's, somebody else just mentioned, can there be partnership between 2 clubs in Ireland? So it depends. Like we in our own Erasmus Plus projects at the Wheel, we've had Irish partners in projects, but you'd kind of balance it out with another EU partner. It's not against the rules to have Irish partners in projects, but it still has to be an EU project. So there has to be a good reason why there's 2 Irish partners, and why and kind of have it balanced out with more European representation. We'll go on to some characteristics now, but somebody asked, was it core funding? No, this is always, well, for Erasmus Plus, it's project funding. There isn't really core funding or operation grants that are available. So then somebody just says, if you have friends in another club in a different country, how do you go about becoming a partner with them? Who do they contact? So if this was somebody from Wildcats, so if you want to get in touch with me directly with those kind of technical questions, I'm happy to support with that. But certainly watching that kind of training that we did in January, which we'll include in the follow-up, might help. It's really just about getting your organisation registered with an organizational ID number at EU level, so that they're part of the system, and then I suppose adding them to your application. And that's really as complicated as it gets. Does this influence the application? Or if a potential partner for a new project or application has possibly received Erasmus Plus or Erasmus Plus project? No, you can have multiple Erasmus Plus projects going at once. That's not a problem at all. So yeah, you're not. There's plenty of organizations around Europe that might have half a dozen or a dozen European projects on the go at any one time. So that's no problem. We might move on to our next section just so that we can kind of wrap up on time. And as I said, we will have, we'll hang around for a little while afterwards, so that, we can, just one second, and I'll find my slide. So that if anybody has any very specific questions, we're here to answer them. And we also have, some guidance here in our last couple of slides, just around how to reach out for help and what supports are available. But before we wrapped up, we did just want to kind of touch on what are kind of good practices in EU funded projects. And Michael kind of alluded to it there. But I suppose the first thing would be to understand what EU funding is and what it's not. So what it is an opportunity to learn and to share, to connect with and influence policy, to be innovative, to fast track some strategic objectives that you might have, to collaborate with partners and to see that as a positive thing, as an opportunity and not a barrier, and to build capacity and organizational profile. So there certainly is, you know, it can be very, very challenging, but if you have the capacity and the systems in-house in your organization to manage a European project, then you certainly will be able to tackle other types of funding and national funding a lot more confidently. So, you know, you don't see this as just an investment into EU funding. And, you know, if we don't get the grant, then it's all a waste. It's not. You build your capacity gradually over time. And it doesn't just limit itself to European funding. It goes across your whole organization, that you become better at applying for and securing funding and delivering impactful projects. So then to look at what it's not, and this is kind of, you know, setting expectations as well. So it's not a quick fix. As I said, we do kind of recommend a strategic approach. We wouldn't recommend jumping into projects without really fully considering it, without getting to know your partners a little bit. So yeah, we recommend you take kind of a measured approach. And if you're prepared to go for this deadline in May, by all means go for it. It has been a bit rushed this year because of the delayed programs. But certainly if you want to be a bit more cautious and kind of take your time with it, you can aim for next year, and the deadlines will happen on a rolling basis after that. So it's not a now or never situation. You can afford to kind of take it easy and be as strategic as you can about it. It's not easy either. I suppose it's, you know, the applications can be challenging. There is a big learning curve up front. However, once you crack it and you get it and you understand how this system works and you get how to deliver these projects, it is a very lucrative and continuous source of funding that you can continue to apply for years on end. It's not without risk. You know, projects are inherently risky. That's why we call them projects and not operational work. So it's just about being prepared for that. You can do as much risk mitigation as possible. And there's certainly things you can, you know, the different measures you can have in place to try and reduce the risk, but you can never completely eliminate it. And, you know, it's not core funding mostly. There's very few operating grants available through EU funding at all. But certainly through Erasmus Sport, which we were focused on today, they don't do core funding in general. These are action funding or project funding. And then national funding mostly. So there are exceptions. So if you look at programs like Peace or the European Social Fund or LEADER that are managed nationally and distributed nationally, that can be kind of seen as national funding. But most Brussels managed programs like Erasmus Sport require European partnership of some make, shape or form. And just to very kind of quickly look at the types of activities that can be funded under things like an Erasmus Sport project. As I said, it might be different when you get into things like Peace and ESF. You could, or LEADER, you could have like capital projects and things like that. But under Erasmus Sport, you're looking at things like knowledge exchange and transfer, or exchange of best practice, it can often be called, comparative research, events and conferences, mobilities, which is just EU speak for kind of study placements, sending staff or volunteers or athletes abroad to learn from different models, or having people come to you to learn from your models. Capacity building, training, workshops, intellectual outputs, again, it's kind of EU speak. I think it's getting a bit outdated now. It might be scrapped in this new program, but in the program up to 2020, these were things like, I suppose, tangible outputs, you call them, from projects. So things like toolkits or guides or modules or research reports or a piece of technology or whatever could be an intellectual output, a kind of tangible output from the project. New technologies, methodologies and approaches, building of networks, and then on a more, depends on the funding, but more rarely they will fund campaigns and initiatives and kind of awareness raising. And just in general, like good projects are, and you know, we've referenced this already, you know, they're connected to EU program priorities and policies. I mean, this kind of goes for any funding, that you have to remember that, you know, you put the funders' priorities and the funders' goals front and center. And of course, they should complement closely your own goals. But remember that they're the ones paying. So it's their priorities take center stage. But a good project is very closely connected to EU policy and demonstrates an understanding of EU goals and policy. Competitive, like you have to remember that you are competing with the continent here when it comes to those EU managed programs like Erasmus Sport. So it's important to be innovative. It's important to offer value for money. They don't want to fund business as usual. They want things that are new, that will introduce something and that can be transferred kind of across Europe. That's central to it. Impact orientated and sustainable. So it's about, what difference is it going to make, to whom, how will you know if it's successful? So it's just this constant kind of focus on impact is very important. So you kind of start from that and almost work your way backwards. And they also want to see sustainability. So they want to see that whatever you create isn't going to just die once the funding ends, that it's something that can be integrated into your organization and can be sustainable and will have long lasting effects and impact. And then, truly European and have EU added value. So not to treat partnership like a tick box exercise. It's not that you can't get projects that are funded, that are exclusively kind of Western European partnerships, but they do like to see like a good geographical spread that can really help add value to your project. And there needs to be EU added value, which means like, why should this project be funded by Europe? Is it something that you could have funded nationally? Is there a reason why Europe in particular should fund this? So it's important to kind of have an understanding of that and to think about that when you're designing your projects. And just, I suppose, where are we now? We're on time, so that's good. Support's available. In terms of like, if you're interested in applying, certainly this year, if you're interested in applying for the May deadlines, we'd urge you to get in contact with us soon so we can support you if you need support. But if you are thinking of applying next year, that you can kind of stay tuned with us and that we can kind of support you as you explore that kind of process in a less pressurized time frame. But you have Sport Ireland and Cormac, and that's his email address here, and you'll get his slides as well. But that's your kind of go-to person at Sport Ireland who can support you. But then you also have Access Europe, which is the program that the Wheel manages. And this is, as I said, it's funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs, and it's all around kind of keeping people informed of new EU funding programs and deadlines. So we research all of the funding that is available for the civil sector, including sport, every month, and we compile it into a newsletter. It's completely free. You can sign up for free on our website, and it doesn't just keep you up to date about the deadlines, but it also kind of puts them into a succinct, anybody who's ever navigated an EU website will know that it's not always the easiest process. There's a lot of information. So we try to kind of put it into simple, bite-sized, easy to navigate kind of format that'll make it easy for people to scan and see if there's something in there for them. We also put up updates then about various EU policy, about upcoming events, trainings, things like that. We offer free trainings and events and will be throughout the year, and we will continue to support Sport Ireland and work with Sport Ireland to do targeted events for sport. This was our very first kind of demystifying activity, but from here we're going to, for those of you who've learned from today and thought, okay, this is something that's interesting to our organization, we want to keep learning, we'll have more sessions like this coming up so that you can kind of gradually build up your knowledge over time. We offer one-to-one advice, support, application support, and kind of signposting, so we can link you in with, when there are kind of national contact points or agencies, we can link you in with them, but we can also provide, kind of be that kind of help desk support for people. And then networking opportunities locally and at EU level. So we're looking, it's a little bit challenging now in COVID times, but we're looking at how we can kind of facilitate networking online so that people can build partnerships. We're in the process at the moment of also kind of building a partnership platform, which will kind of showcase Irish civil society, where people kind of upload their profiles and explain what kind of projects they're interested in. And then we will then kind of promote that to other EU countries to try and help facilitate partnerships. And as we mentioned earlier, we've also worked on kind of a template that with Sport Ireland that will help people communicate their organisation and their project idea, and that will help Sport Ireland, I suppose, to help matchmake them or promote them through their European network, so that Irish organisations can help find partners or can be supported to find partners. But it'll also mean that if EU organisations are looking for Irish partners, that they can be directed to the right type of partner. So that's really it. If you are interested in going for an application this year, your first step really is to get in contact with us. It's europe@wheel.ie. You'll receive all of this in the follow-up, or Cormac at Sport Ireland, who can kind of help you through the next steps. And if it's not, I suppose, this year, but you just want to keep informed, I would definitely, sign up to Access Europe to keep up to date on everything, and stay tuned into Sport Ireland, who will let you know, when our next trainings and events are coming. So with that, we're 1 minute to spare. So Cormac, I might hand over to you if you want to say anything to wrap up. And as I said, we will hang around afterwards as well.
Thank you very much, Emma, and thanks to you and your team in the wheel for your excellent support just over the last couple of weeks. We look forward to working. Sport Ireland certainly looks forward to working with you. And the sports sector in Ireland really appreciate the backup and the support that's needed here. That in all honesty, many organisations do need the help here, and I think that if we can actually crack this, we're going to see a hell of a lot of projects. Hopefully, getting funding here. That's my goal. I'd love to see a lot of projects, getting funded at the grassroots level, but also at the strategic level. Governing bodies and indeed local sports partnerships, progressing ideas with partners, and I would very, very much encourage organizations just to certainly, by all means, go through the good practice and all that, but don't be afraid about this. This is really, Europe is a wonderful opportunity for Ireland. I think in our hearts we realize this, that there's great opportunities for linkages and collaboration. We've spoken today about Erasmus Plus for sport, but I would also just ask sporting bodies to reflect on the Erasmus program in a broader sense as well, because the youth agenda is really, really big agenda under the Erasmus program, and it offers a lot of opportunities there to actually support, encourage, enable young people to under programs here, and you can actually link, you could actually kind of develop partnerships with youth services organizations and indeed educational bodies and indeed other services, other potential partners under that strand. And it may not be under this Erasmus Sport program. It might actually just link under the youth element of the Erasmus program, for example. So there are, the Erasmus is as I said earlier, it's a massive program, and it has, about three or obviously four, I think, big pillars, We're going to stay online here. Just again, thanks to Miles and Michael and McGeehan for their contributions. Great to get all the questions. We're going to stay online just for another wee while to see if people have got specific projects. It's likely that we will run a follow-up workshop for the projects that are, if you like, in the that are looking to maybe put together their applications. But we'll see how we go, bearing in mind that the 20th of May is the deadline for the 2021 submissions. So really, there's no point overly concerning yourself with that initial call unless you've really got a very solid project and idea in place and you're already in dialogue with the partner. And so you're in a position to kind of wrap a project up. Now, I'm sure Michael and Miles would say that there's always a last minute rush to get applications in and such like. But that said, it's not a good idea to rush these things either, So, but look, at the program will be around again. I would envisage early next year, and more than likely there will be a number of new angles or opportunities on the program next year. It's evident that they really are, I suppose, on the back foot this year in Europe, and they just want to get a basic call out. And they want to get, if you like, a number of projects off the bat this year, so that they have kept the integrity of the overall program running. So that's certainly my take on it. But so look at, we're going to close the formal session now. Again, thanks to everyone. And if people want to stay on, we're just going to go into gallery view, and just people can fire out any questions, and just if they basically have projects that they want to quickly discuss. We're happy to give an input. We're not experts.